gives us the knowledge
and skills
for a fulfilling life.
We will live in a world where all girls and all women have equal opportunities
to thrive and be powerful and safe.
We cannot succeed if half the world is headed back.
We will live in a world
where all people can get clean water
and proper toilets
at home, at school, and at work.
We will live in a world where
there's sustainable energy for everyone.
Heat, light,
and power for the whole planet.
Without destroying the planet.
We will live in a world where economies prosper.
A new wealth
leads to decent jobs
for everyone.
And we will live in a world
where our industry,
our infrastructure, and our
best innovations
are not just used to make money, but to make all our lives better.
We will live in a world
where prejudices and extremes of inequality
are defeated
inside our countries
and between different countries.
Where people live in cities and communities
that are safe, progressive,
and support everyone who lives there.
Where we replace
what we consume.
Planet where we put back
what we take out of the earth.
We live in a world that is decisively rolling back from climate
change.
Where we restore and protect the life in our oceans and seas.
Where we restore
and protect
life on land,
the forests,
animals,
the earth itself.
With peace between and inside countries.
Where all governments are open
and answer to us for what they do at home and abroad.
And the justice rules.
With everyone equal before the law.
Where all countries and we their people
work together
in partnerships of all kinds
to make these goals a reality
for everyone, everywhere.
These are the United Nations global goals
for sustainable development.
Let's get to work.
Let's make it happen.
We can be.
We must be the first generation
to end extreme poverty.
The generation
most determined
to fight injustice
and inequalities.
The generation that saves the planet from climate change.
And this is how it will get done. The global goals.
A 15-year plan
for everyone, everywhere.
With no one left behind.
We will live in a world
where nobody
anywhere
lives in extreme poverty.
Where no one
goes hungry.
Where no one
wakes in the morning
asking if there will be food today.
We will live in a world
where no child has to die of
diseases we know how to cure.
And where proper health care
is a lifelong right for us all.
We will live in a world
where everyone
goes to school.
And education gives us the knowledge
and skills
for a fulfilling life.
We will live in a world where all girls and all women have equal opportunities
to thrive and be powerful and safe.
We cannot succeed if half the world is headed back.
We will live in a world
where all people can get clean water
and proper toilets
at home, at school.
Where there's sustainable energy for everyone.
Heat, light,
and power for the whole planet.
Without destroying the planet.
We will live in a world where economies prosper.
A new wealth
leads to decent jobs
for everyone.
And we will live in a world
where our industry,
our infrastructure, and our
best innovations
are not just used to make money, but to make all our lives better.
We will live in a world
where prejudices and extremes of inequality
are defeated
inside our countries
and between different countries.
Where people live in cities and communities
that are safe, progressive,
and support everyone who lives there.
Where we replace
what we consume.
Planet where we put back
what we take out of the earth.
We live in a world that is decisively rolling back from
climate change.
Where we restore and protect the life in our oceans and seas.
Where we restore
and protect
life on land,
the forests,
animals,
the earth itself.
With peace between and inside countries.
Where all governments are open
and answer to us for what they do at home and abroad.
And the justice rules.
With everyone equal before the law.
where all countries and we their people
work together.
Partnerships of all kinds.
To make these goals a reality.
These are the United Nations global goals
For sustainable development.
Let's get to work.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Yeah, let's make it happen. Let's make achieving sustainable development happen. I believe we are all doing great this morning. We are so glad to welcome each and every one of you to this week 2 of the SDG Advocate program. And once again, we want to congratulate each and everyone that on this call that have been selected to attend this program. And right about now, we are going to be starting to this training and we are going to keep to time. Yeah, we have till 11:30 for this session. And it's going to be an impactful one indeed. And before we move to this training, I would just like to share one or two information. Please, it's very important to keep to the class, and we are going to be having 2 sessions. The very first masterclass session is going to be on circular economy, while the second one is going to focus on climate change and environmental sustainability. For those of us that don't have our display name properly in the proper format, please ensure you have it in the proper format. The format is your display name should start with your first name, your state name. And after that state name, you should have your first name and your last name. So I can see Chisom from Abuja. Yeah, that's a very good way of having your display name. For each and everyone that have not done that, just click on your name and ensure your display name is in the right format. Please keep to that instruction, and we won't like to say over and over again. So whenever you are joining the masterclass session, let your display name come first. Your state name come first. Like I mentioned, right about now, we are going to be starting the session without taking much of our time. It's already 9:06, and we are blessed to have an industry expert in our midst that is going to be taking us through circular economy. And this is in person of Ms. Deborah Edward, who is the Communication and Event Manager for Circular Economy Innovation and Circular Economy Innovation Partnership here in Nigeria. We are so glad to have you. Thank you, Deborah, for joining us this morning. And we sincerely want to appreciate the leadership of the organization, Dr. Natali, for all you do in line to circular economy across the globe. Good morning, Debbie. I hope you can hear me.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Good morning this morning. Thank you for honoring our invitation, and thank you for always coming around to facilitate this session. And we indeed appreciate all you do, and we really I know that it's going to be of positive impact for each and everyone on this call.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity to share or to facilitate this session this morning. Thank you. Okay, so Emmanuel, I will need your help with something. So I'm using my phone for the call, though my system is on in front of me. So I sent you this slide. So I might need your help to display this slide for this session. I can't seem to connect on my system, so I can't share my screen. And I don't want that to kind of delay the session. I just sent it to you via email. So if you would share that, that would be awesome. But then I can just teach the session from my own screen here, if that's okay for everybody.
Okay, please, just start with the session, then we see to that. Truly one of the program managers for myself. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, good morning, everyone. Once again, like I've been introduced already, my name is Deborah Edward. I work with Circular Economy Innovation Partnership, and today I'll be taking the session on circular economy, consumption, and production. Yes, so before we even start, what itself is circular economy? I'm sure that a lot of people have heard the term circular economy a couple of times, but what does it really mean? What does it really entail? First thing that I'd like to say is that circular economy is very focused on designing out waste. I'll take that again. Circular economy is very focused on designing out waste. Now, what does that mean? It means that in a typical linear economy, which is what we operate today, we take things, we make them, and then we waste them. So when you want to produce something, typically you take the raw material, you take it through a series of processes, you have your finished product, you give it to your consumers. When they use it and they're done with it, there's some waste product that is left out of it, and then that's where the circle, or that's where the straight line ends. That in itself is linear economy. Whereas circular economy says no, rather than take it, make it, and then waste it, why don't we take it, make it, share it, lease it, reuse it, refurbish it, repair it, recycle it, and keep on going round that circle over and over again. So I'm seeing some comments already saying that circular economy is all about recycling. Yes and no. Nowadays, we find that a lot of people say circular economy is synonymous with recycling. That's not true. Recycling is actually meant to be the last resort. Because when you say circular economy is all about recycling, you encourage people to do things and say that, oh, we'll just recycle it later. For example, there's a lot of conversation around single-use plastic. I have plastic in front of me now. Single-use plastic. And the conversation is, people say, yes, we say plastic is harmful to us, but then it's still being produced in large numbers and it's still being used. But then we have plastic recycling. Doesn't that solve the problem? No, it doesn't solve the problem, because if it solves the problem, it means that we are still saying, go ahead and keep producing single-use plastics. That's not what circular economy is about. Circular economy says, yes, you can recycle, but even before you get to the point of recycling, while you are still in the process of designing your product, while you are still in the process of making your product into something that people will use, can you consider how long it will stay in the system? Can you consider if your the people that patronize you are going to share the product with other people? Can you consider if they're going to refurbish it? Can you consider if they're going to repair it and what the processes are going to be like? Can you consider that at the end of the day, when that product is exhausted, what happens to it? Is it going to come back to you as the producer? And are you going to utilize parts of those products to make other products? So that's what circular economy is all about. It's a model in itself of production and consumption. So it speaks to both the producer of the product as well as the consumer of the product. So while yes, as the producer, I'm thinking about, oh, I need to make my production line sustainable. I need to ensure that I do not waste product. I need to ensure that even the energy that I use in producing the product does not affect the climate through carbon emission and so on. The consumer also has a part to play. What is the part that the consumer has to play? The consumer has to think in terms of, how do I utilize this product? Typically, we like to preach minimalist living, where we say that don't buy what you don't need. Don't buy what you will not use. Don't accept what you don't need and what you will not use. I'll give you an example. We all go to events a lot. And one of the parts that I'm sure, it's not only me that likes it. We used to like this part where they give us souvenirs, right? So if you've had the opportunity to go to events and they keep on giving you souvenir, let me give you a typical example. They give you plastic spoon today, they give you packer tomorrow, they give you purse the next day. You need to ask yourself, do I really need this item? It's a difficult pill to swallow. As a consumer, you ask yourself, do I really need that item? Do I need the extra packer? Do I need the spoon? Do I need the bucket? Because when you begin to ask yourself those questions, you will find that in small ways you can contribute to the circular economy by saying that, oh, thank you so much. This is a gracious gift, but I don't really need it. You don't need to tell the person outrightly that you don't need it, or you know that you don't need it. You just say, thank you, don't worry, I'm here to support you, and so on and so forth. That now encourages people to say, okay, we only buy what we need. Also, when it comes to gift giving, so I'm trying to give a lot of examples just to create like a foundation before we move deeper. When it comes to gift giving, it's also essential to now say, how and what does this person need? Let me buy only what the person needs. That way, you have created a system where you eliminate waste, because you find that a lot of time, all of us have things in our houses that we probably will not use in 2 years. And then it's when we're clearing up our places that we now say that, oh, this thing is here and it's my own. So essentially, what am I trying to say? That circular economy is a model of both production. So it has to do with both the producer and the consumer, that says that, okay, this product and these services, how can we share them? How can we list them? How can we reuse them? How can we repair them? How can we refurbish them? How can we recycle these existing materials for as long as possible so that we ensure that the life cycle of products and services is extended? I hope that we've been able to get that as the introductory part of what circular economy is about. So we're going to move to the next thing, which is what are the benefits of circular economy? So it's not enough for me to come and say, oh, circular economy, you take only, you do limited buyings, you only buy what you need and so on and so forth. But then why is it very, very important? Someone says saying no to gifts. Okay, why is it very, very important? First of all, let's look at the climate. How many of us like the weather these days? Sometimes the weather is not predictable. We have like thunderous rainfalls that are really, really scary, that now show how much of little planning a lot of us did to the houses that, like a lot of the builders of the houses were living in it. We have floodings. We have things that are now revealing when you cut corners, because a lot of corners were cut to design the society that we live in today. But we now have the climate condition revealing all those things and making us say we need to sit up right now. So how is circular economy important? Circular economy encourages the reduction of greenhouse gases. Now, because circular economy, remember I said, it's about designing out waste. And it ensures that you do several things. It requires that you reuse, repair, recycle. It therefore means that you are able to reduce the amount of gases that are required to keep producing products. Typically, when you want to produce products, if anyone has stayed near a factory or something, you see a lot of gases that are being emitted. Sometimes they smell, sometimes it's very, very bad, sometimes it pollutes water if you're very close to river areas. Circular economy requiring that you produce only what is being needed, and as much as possible, you make sure that people can reuse or there is a repairing service available for people buying your products. It ensures that the amount of greenhouse gases is reduced, which in turn now says that, okay, we are doing one thing for the climate. It doesn't miraculously do, oh, it's gone, because there are a lot of harmful effects that are already, like we're already reaping the results of what we've done, but then it reduces how quickly the negative effects catch up to us so that we can make changes as is needed. Now, when you're producing again, typically, let's say we want to produce books, for example, books are typically made from trees. So it means that you are cutting trees, you're going through a lot of processes to refine the wood and use the shavings to make the paper and all that. When you now think about the fact that we have so much paper already in the world, why don't we take the paper and look for how to reuse this paper and make recycled paper, which can now be used for other things? That entire process allows you to think of, okay, how have we been able to reduce the amount of emission that is being made? That's just one end. The second end is it minimizes the amount of resources that we are depleting. Let's go back to the tree cutting. When you typically cut trees, it's very easy to destroy something or to pull something down than it is to build it, which is what we see in trees. It takes sometimes as long as 3 to 5 years and even more for trees to be built. For trees to grow and reach that mature stage. And they, of course, provide shade and protection for us in the environment. Now, when we fall down those trees, what we do is that we've cut off the covering that we have. Yes, we have the books and all from that. But the amount of years that it will take for us to grow the trees that we've fell already, it's quite long. Now, circular economy now forces you to think and say, we need to minimize the amount of cutting that we do, and instead look for other solutions that are better. And this now helps to protect the ecosystem, that's the environment. So that is another way where circular economy is important. Let's quickly move on to energy efficiency. Circular economy enhances energy efficiency. It's in circular economy you begin to see things where you begin to think of alternative or renewable energy sources. So it forces you to begin to ask yourself questions. How can we use wind, for example, as a source of energy? How can we use sunshine? We have an abundance of that as a source of energy. How do we use rainfall as a source of energy? Of course, there are things that are going on already in place to do this, but it feels like it has not become mainstream. It has not become accessible to people. So it begs the question, how do we make this more accessible to people? Or even a very, very interesting one where you have food waste, for example. How do we turn food waste into energy and then utilize this for running our businesses sustainably? We'll talk a bit about that a little further in the presentation. So because of the entire process where you have to think creatively, think in terms of design, think in terms of how can I use what we typically refer to as waste to make products, you are able to say, okay, this is how we are able to enhance energy efficiency. This is how we're able to say, okay, we have more energy at less cost or at less damage to the environment. And then finally, one of the very, very favorite importance that I like to share with you is new economic opportunities. All these things I've mentioned actually create jobs for people. So beyond saving the environment, it creates jobs for people. It introduces new business models. When you are talking about business models of sharing, let's talk about Uber. They are not sponsoring this presentation. Let's talk about the transport system. Let's talk about the transport systems where you are sharing the cabs and so on and so forth. Ideally, sharing cabs is supposed to reduce the emission in some ways because it should limit, ideally, it should limit the amount of cars that are on the road. Nigeria, we have a very, very show-off problem. We like to show off. So when you have a car, you want to show off that you have a car. But if you are really, really conscious about protecting the environment, you won't think of it in terms of I own a car, which is a good thing. You will think of it in terms of how can I reduce the amount of carbon emission that is released into the atmosphere. And I can do that by sharing a ride. I can do that by, hitchhiking with my friends. I can do that by carpooling. So those are ways that you've created new opportunities. People now have things to do with their cars. And then you have also created opportunities for others while you are reducing the amount of emission that is released in the atmosphere. So thank you so much for sharing this slide. I am in page 4. I'm moving to page 5 now. So I'm moving to page 5. Yes. And now, let's quickly recap because I think I've said a lot. So I'm going to mention the 4 very quickly, the 4 importance of circular economy, which the first one is reducing greenhouse gas emission, minimizing resource depletion, enhancing energy efficiency, and then creating new economic opportunities. Let's move on to the principles of circular economy. So yes, circular economy is good, it does X, Y, Z, but then what are the principles? So when you want to think about it, what are the principles of circular economy? What makes it, what would you say that, okay, when I have this figured out and this figured out, I am really operating a circular economy? So there are 3 things you want to look out for. The first one is eliminate waste and pollution. I have said it a lot, we have sang it a lot, because that is the focal point of circular economy. Eliminate waste and pollution. How can we eliminate waste and pollution? That's one of the things you want to think about when it comes to circular economy. Number 2, circulate products and materials at their highest value. How can we circulate the products? How can we send them out to people, to our consumers at the highest value to ensure that, everything is kept in check, to ensure that even as we are circulating this product, we are not causing more harm than good. Because there are a lot of solutions that we've created that we did not think about the side effects of those creations to the environment. So while it's interesting, while it's very, very good, it actually is causing a negative effect to the environment and to the world at large. And then finally, there is regenerate nature. Yes, I'm sure that you'll get the slides after the presentation. So the last one is regenerate nature. And why we think of it as a principle of circular economy is because we have so much to learn from nature. How many of us love nature? Even if you don't love nature, you try and love it because there is no other place for us to go. So regenerate nature. How much can we regenerate nature? That's something you think about in circular economy, because what we are trying to do is we're trying to restore what was lost. Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you, Jeremiah. We're trying to restore what was or what is lost. You understand, from the environment. So we have to think of it in terms of regenerate nature as well. So I'm moving to the next slide. And here's where we're going to talk about eliminate waste and pollution. Is it possible? So this is a question for you. Is it really possible to say that waste and pollution is never created in the first place? Is it possible? All of us that are loving nature, yay. Is it possible to say, okay, we will never create waste and we will never do pollution? Yes, it's possible to an extent, because there's a lot of debate around it. It's possible to an extent. How? It first starts with your mind. It first starts with your mind. It first starts with seeing, yeah, some people are saying no, some people are saying yes, that's fine. It first starts with seeing nothing as waste. How do I mean? So I'll give you a typical example, one that I love to give so much, and it's called jam coconut. Now, this particular company, what they've been able to do is that they've taken the coconut fruit. I'm sure we're all familiar with the coconut fruit. And they have found a way to make a sustainable line of products from coconut without or creating waste. And I will give some inference to what they do and some things that they can still do, because of course there is always room for improvement to make that a sustainable product. So let's imagine you have a coconut now. A coconut typically comes in a husk. So it has this outer covering that dries out, and then we peel it before we get to the shell. Now that shell outside, that husk rather outside, when they want to make their production process, they dehusk the coconut and they have several of those things. Typically, someone will say that that is waste, but no, that is not waste. That is a fire starter material. If you've ever opened fire before, or you've cooked with firewood or something, don't worry, this experience. The coconut husk there is a fire starter. So it's not waste in that line. So what they could typically do, I don't know if they do this, but this is just me inferring, is to take that husk and say, we have another company, because you don't have to do it on your own. That's something about circular economy. It's about collaboration. It's not that you will now produce all the products in the world. Who have time? Nobody. I'm so sorry, I'm getting excited. So you take the husk and then you find somebody who can use the husk. So another company that creates fire starters, that creates, safe fires for people. You take it and say, okay, this is our waste, but this is your raw material. Package it and they'll sell out. That's one thing. Let's go back to the coconut. We now get to the shell. Now, when they remove the shell, because we're going to the fruit inside the coconut, when they remove the shell, they take the shell and say, what can we do with this shell? Now, I'm going to give you an example of a company that uses coconut shells. And what they've been able to do with coconut shells is they have made things from buttons. So the buttons that ladies or guys typically have on their shirts, they've made buttons from coconut shells to key holders. So then they've also made candles, scented candles that you can have in your houses. So the container where the shell becomes the container, and then you have the candles, the wax, and then the wick, and then you can light it up in your house and have a very serene environment. So that is from the shell of coconut, something that we would typically throw away. That's another company entirely doing that. Now, the one for the fashion, you have the buttons, you design it or embed it with other things and make it beautiful. And then you have your buttons on your clothes, doing and practicing sustainable fashion. That's one side. Now they take the coconut itself and say, okay, this is like our main product. What do we do with it? So we make coconut milk, if it's possible. We also make coconut balls made from, we add flour, we add milk, we add sugar, and make these nice balls that you can eat or pop in your mouth whenever you're hungry. That's one end. We're not done. When we're making these things, we have coconut shavings that come out of it. We make it into coconut candy. We're not done with that though. The coconut candy itself, when we are producing it, it releases oils and all that. So we make coconut oil that you could either rub on your hair or your skin as a beauty product. And at the end of the day, I'm not sure what is going to be remaining. But what I've been able to say or explain to you, if you can follow through the story, is we've been able to take that one product and say that all these things, there is no waste. And how did they achieve that? Remember, I said something about collaboration. They collaborated. They didn't necessarily need to say that we have to make the fireworks. Of course, if you have the resources and the money and the time, you can say we want to do all the kind of products from this one product. But instead, they found people who that is their line of work and said, okay, we will supply you this thing and you use it. Another fantastic example, very quickly, before we move to the next one, is Planet 3R. And Planet 3R, what they did was they took pure water nylon, pure water sachets, they recycled it, they made it into bags, fashion statement items. How did they do that? They wash it, they process it, let me go slowly. So they wash the pure water nylons after collecting it from restaurants, from people, because we know how we drink pure water a lot and then the sachets are everywhere. Now they wash it, clean it up very well. They use the scissors or whatever tools that they have to cut it into tiny bits. And they weave it into long strings of what you would call fabric, but now we'll call it maybe pure water fabric. And then they now make it into bags, book covers. Book covers. There's some of them they used to make shirts and garments. So what that person has done is taken something that typically we would refer to as pure water sachets, and turned it into something where you can now purchase it, use it for something in your house and enjoy it. So in those ways, we've been able to say no waste. So it means that whenever you are thinking of something, even as a business owner, as a typical Nigerian person, you think of how can I design it? Remember, it starts from the designing process. So when you are even creating the idea, because I'm sure there are a lot of beautiful people in this room who are business people, who will do entrepreneurship, who will work with companies that do things. It means that when you are going into those places, you now begin to tell them, how can we, as much as possible, ensure that, oh, what is going to happen to this one? We call it whys. So we call it 5 whys. Typically, when you're asking questions, you say, why is this happening? Why is this happening? Why is this happening? But in this case, you will call it how. So you do 5 hows. Whenever you are doing something, you say, how can we remove this out of the picture? How can we utilize this? How can we make this better? How can we? So over and over again, thank you for that. You begin to think about it from a design standpoint. So I'm moving to the next slide, which is circulate products and materials at their highest value. Somebody is advertising her coconut company. That's pretty interesting. Okay, so circulate products and materials at their highest value. How do we do that? A very simple example that I like to think about, of course, there are many examples, are phones. I think of phones. Why? Because for phones parts, phones, they don't decompose. They don't decompose. So phones typically, they can stay in the states that they are forever and ever, maybe, and then encounter some rust and all those things. But then how can we utilize phones in a way that makes it very, very easy, or very, very, would I say sustainable, or very, very circular economy inclined? It means that when we take phones, and I think this is something Nigerians have been able to do, but then there are also ways we can improve on it, is we take phones and say, okay, when I'm done with these phones, people that like to use phones for 2 years, 3 years, you typically give it to somebody, your younger one, or you sell it. I know somebody who changes phones because the person loves using the latest phones. The person changes phones every year. And so what the person does is he keeps the phone in a good condition and then gives it out and adds a top-up amount and then gets a new phone. And then that phone that he or she has used goes to another person. That's a simple case where you are using the phone, but this time there is a price attached to it. So it makes it still economically viable in that particular instance. Then when the phone is bad, you don't typically throw it away. What do? You say, okay, we go to the repairer. We have a number of those now. And then the person repairs the phone. Or it has gotten to a point where it has become so bad that it's like for you to repair the phone, you have to package the whole phone or couple the whole phone together again. Refurbishing. We have refurbished phones that you can get, all working in good conditions, all good to go, republished from different materials and sometimes maybe new parts by the manufacturer. Beautiful. Then maybe you don't want to refurbish your phone, or there is no refurbishing service where you are. You have people that decouple the phone and buy the spare parts. You get to that point and it's like, oh, there's nothing to do anymore. You have people who deal with e-waste. So there are a lot of companies that deal with e-waste. It means that when your electronics, not just phones, your washing machine, your cooker, typically name electronics in your homes. Where I come from, we call the abokis that help pick all those iron, we call them Bakaradiko. I don't know where that word came from, but that's what we call it. Probably to say the sound that is being made when they are shaking their iron things around and calling for you to sell them your iron waste or your waste your electronic waste. So we have those ones, and those ones work in line. Okay, scavengers, yes. Scavengers, thank you for that. Now, those people work in line and get this electronic waste. And then they also have people in organizations. We have HICLI, for example. They deal with electronic waste. So they in a safe and very, very conducive environment, take apart those electronic waste and then recycle them or ship them to those who need those parts. So these are just different ways that we can circulate products at their highest value for as long as possible to ensure that there is nothing that is waste. As much as possible, it can be refined. Which now takes us to the next one, where we will talk about biological flow and technical material flow. Now, remember the example I gave about phones. I'm on the next slide, please. The example that I gave about phones. I said that phones typically they can keep their shape, except you go smash it on the floor and all that. They keep their shape, they stay in shape, they don't decompose and all that. So they belong to the technical material flows. While we have the biological material flow, and that particular one, things under that line, typically agricultural products and all, they are subject to nature's dealing. So typically, they can decompose, they can go through composting, they can be used to make energy sources. They basically go back into nature. And these two examples, we can move to the next slide now. These two flows are things that we need to think about when we are saying, okay, how do we circulate resources? So on my left, you would see that we have the biological flow. Like I said, these are where you have things like food waste. So food waste, yes, they can also be used to produce manure. So food waste, we have things where you have biochemical food stock for maybe animals. You have anaerobic respiration to get gases out of it that can be used as maybe cooking source or power sources. You have things that go back into nature. Sometimes they could even be used to make feeds for animals to eat as well. That's on one end, the biological material flow, which is on my left. And on my right, we have the technical flow, which are things that do not decompose. Rather, these things are reused. So typically on this right side, you have things that are reused. They are shared. They are reused, they are shared, they are distributed, remanufactured, and then finally, they are recycled. Now, we're going to pause for thought because I want to hear your comments, or I want to see how well we've been following this class discourse. So I'm on the next slide. We wanted to quickly do an activity. Now, remember I shared with you that we have two parts. We have the biological part and we have the technical part. So I'm going to give you some examples, about 4 of them. And then you are going to tell me which of them, where they belong to. Do they belong to the left or do they belong to the right? Are they biological or are they technical? Now, we have the first example, a mobile phone repair service. Now, a mobile phone repair service, I want to see your comments. A mobile phone repair service, would you say that it belongs to the left or it belongs to the right? Would you say that it is a biological or it's technical? So thank you, Mercy. You're saying technical, modern, mobile technology. Okay, technical flow, wonderful. Technical flow, awesome. It means that you're all following. You can clap for yourself. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for following. So a mobile phone, I think because I've given the example of phone, that gave it away. It's technical. Now, the next one, we have a car repairing scheme. Where does a car repairing scheme fall into? Where does a car repairing scheme fall into? Are you sure it's not biological? What if the car runs on palm oil? Okay, so I have a lot of people saying technical. So a car repairing scheme is also technical because typically the car goes through the whole circle where you share the car, then you could also repair the car, refurbish the car, and so on and so forth. Yes, you are right, it's technical. Now, plastic bottle recycling. Where does plastic bottle recycling fall under? Would you say it's technical or it's biological? I feel these questions are a dead giveaway. So plastic bottle recycling. Okay, plastic bottle recycling is, some people are saying biological. Interesting. Why is plastic bottle recycling biological? No, so plastic bottle recycling is not biological. Okay, it can be both. That's an interesting discourse. Maybe towards the end of the class, we'll hear from that person that says it can be both. But I think that plastic bottle recycling is technical. Why? Because plastic bottles, they do not degrade. It's very hard for them to, be reduced. It cannot decompose. Thank you for that word. It cannot decompose. So it's technical. So what we typically are doing is we're shredding it up, we're cutting it up, we're melting it and using it to make something else. Okay, because it's a petrochemical product. Interesting. But then the thing is, even after you've gotten the plastic from it, it takes, I've heard, millions of years for plastic to go or to decompose into a state that it is no longer harmful. So instead of trying to do that, that is, instead of trying to decompose plastic, what we typically do is we recycle the plastic. So that's why it falls under technical. Now, for the last one, we have regenerative agriculture. So where does regenerative agriculture fall under? Biological. Wonderful. It's a giveaway. It's a giveaway. It's biological. Let's see. Okay, no, let's hurry up and move on. Our time is fast spent. Okay. So we're moving to the next slide. Thank you so much for participating in that quick pop quiz. Let's move on to the next slide. Regenerate nature. Now, this is the third principle. Yes, it's biological. This is the third principle in circular economy. And I said that this is because of the fact that it stems from the nature's process. That is, circular economy looks at nature and says, how can we imitate nature? How can we support the natural processes? And one of the things we've talked about is when it comes to food. So we are on, I think we're on 2 slides away from pause for thought. Thank you. So we're on 2 slides away from pause for thought. So regenerative nature, regenerative agriculture, regenerative nature, yes. So what that does, or what that talks about, it talks about ensuring that we are able to follow through with nature's process. And in this case, I want to ask a question. What have we observed from the way we produce food today? If we can observe the way we produce food items today, we discover that there is a lot of reliance on synthetic fertilizers. There's a lot of reliance on pesticides. There's a lot of reliance on fossil fuels. There's a lot of reliance on things that are damaging to the environment and damaging to the ecosystem. But then the question is, what can we do instead? Because that's the thing. Because if we keep on going on this path, we'll end up doing ourselves more harm than good. So what are some of the things that we can do instead to ensure that we are able to regenerate nature? And I think one of the things we can do is, okay, some people are saying biotechnological seeds, interesting. Okay, so one of the things that I would say we do is we could study nature's pattern. Sustainable agriculture, beautiful. We could study nature's pattern. In fact, I wrote 3 ways actually. So I'll start from the first one. Agroecology. Yeah, thank you. We have agroecology, which is the first one, which is an academic discipline that allows us to study the different ecological processes and then apply it to the agricultural systems that we are using today. So the person that said sustainable agriculture is right. So if you had said organic agriculture, you are right. If you're saying integrated agriculture, you are also right. If you're saying industrial, you are right. Intensive, extensive, you are right. What is important is that when we are applying these systems, we have carefully thought out how do we do it in such a way that they build upon each other rather than cancel out each other. Because what happens normally is when something is new, something is shiny, we run to it and then say, oh, we no longer need what was working before. Before, we used to do something where we leave our lands to fallow. So you leave your lands to fallow over and over again so that, the land regains its natural nutrients. And then when we now have fertilizer, we're not like, oh, we don't need to leave the lands anymore. We have fertilizer, it can do it. And yes, it has done it for us. This is where we are. So instead of saying, oh, we have fertilizers, we can use fertilizers, or rather than using fertilizers, we use organic fertilizers. We use fertilizers that are made of, maybe waste from food items and through composting and so on and so forth. And then we also leave lands to fallow. We leave lands for a period of time so that they can naturally get back the nutrients that they need, so that they remain healthy and they can also, keep on producing crops. I want to say thank you to everybody that is really contributing in the chats. Like, you guys are awesome. You guys are awesome. Animal dungs, shifting agriculture. These are just examples of what we can do in 5 minutes. I have 5 minutes so that we could do question and answers. These are just some of the things that we can do to ensure that we regenerate nature. Another thing that I like to say is we could practice agroforestry. And that is the practice of growing trees among crops or pastures. Because in a typical nature flow, you have trees taking 3 to 5 years to grow. So a notice for the person moving the slides, we're 3 slides away from pause for thought. So the slides in 3 ways. Yes, that's where we are. So we're talking about agroforestry right now. So because in agroforestry, we have a practice where we grow trees among crops. Trees take a very long time to grow. We could say that we grow trees, and then as we're growing the trees, we now have a situation where we plant crops around it. When you go into the forest or you go into nature, you don't typically need to go. When you watch documentaries, you will find that nature is built in such a way that every single thing has a purpose. Every single thing is protecting something or helping something else, not just itself. So in a typical society, if we are to imitate nature, it means that when we are planting these days, we don't focus on only tree planting. While we plant the trees, we plant the shrubs, we plant the vegetables, we plant the other crops around that same area, because we are trying to create a situation where the trees grow and then protect or provide shade for the plants. And then the plants that do not typically take long to grow have a space where they can constantly keep going and going and growing. So these are just ways that we can think about it and begin to, apply regenerative nature processes to circular economy. Now, one of the things I'm going to go quickly, you can move to the next slide, is, and I've said it before, that it all begins with shifting our mindset. Now, like I said, and I'm going to reiterate, when we shift our mindset to say that waste, it doesn't really exist, it's a design flaw. Instead of waste, how do we, remember the house I mentioned, how do we ensure that everything that is produced is useful? And then how do we reduce, because it's a gradual reduction process, how do we reduce how much of what has been created already that is polluting the environment to the barest minimum? If we want to talk about packaging, for example, so I'll give you an instance. I went somewhere and we went to get food. And I don't know if it was part of their sustainable practice or their design, but when they served the food to us for takeout, that's we were going to take it out of the place, they served it in a paper bag. And it was really interesting. The rice, the spaghetti, not soup. It doesn't work for soup. You need to be creative. But they served the rice, the spaghetti, and everything in a paper box. There was no plastic in between. There was no nylon separating it. It was served in that particular package, because it's a very big restaurant. What the restaurant had discovered is that paper waste is degradable. It will decompose easily. Plastics might not. So they had shifted and said, rather than us giving people plastics every time, instead we want to give them paper packaging. And those are just some ways that we can begin to think of and say that, okay, this is how we shift from things that harm or things that are causing more danger to the environment into things that are doing more good. And I think on a final note, I would say that, like I mentioned earlier, circular economy is a model of production and consumption, which means it involves everybody. But beyond that, as young people, as youths, as people who are in society, as people who are actively in our different places of works and organizations, what can we contribute, to the environment? What can we contribute to circular economy? There is a lot that we can contribute. In my own case now, the people that are having this agricultural discussion, I need to take a pause and really, I really go through the messages one by one. But then, well done. So on a final note, I am, as an educator, I am contributing my own quota by educating or advocating for circular economy and showing you live examples or showing you real life scenarios, how it can be applied and what works. You in your respective fields can say, okay, I would use typical things that we can find. Am I a graphic designer? How can I contribute with my designs? Am I an artist? Because we now have people that do waste to art. As an artist, how can I, incorporate what circular economy is about without missing the focal point? Because if we're not careful, we'll have a situation where everybody is advocating, but nobody is really doing anything. And that's a situation we don't want. So we don't want a situation where we all come to conferences or we all come to places where we talk about things and we showcase things that are probably decorative, and we do not go back to the grassroots or do not go back to the policies or do not go back to the producers and the way people consume and actually do something there. We'll be deceiving ourselves. So instead of that, we all have to play an active role to say, this is how I'm going to contribute. As a producer, I am going to ensure that the whole life cycle and structure, even down to logistics, even down to how I choose our supply chains or the shops that will sell our products, is circular in nature. It considers all factors. And then as a consumer, I'm going to ensure that I only take or I only purchase or I only utilize what I need and nothing more than that. I think with that, I've been able to share a lot, and I hope that we've been able to get one or two things, because at the end of the day, you can move to the next slide. There are some things that we need to ensure that we do right. So we need to look at how we manage resources, how we make and use these products, and what we do with these materials afterwards. And in so doing, we're able to create a thriving circular economy that everybody can benefit from. And on a final note, I would say that design is key to the success of this thing. So designers, we're looking up to you. Thank you very much. Over to you, Emmanuel. I think I've been able to share for the session. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much, Deborah. Awesome session, I must confess. We've had a great time of learning, and I'm sure the advocates also have thoroughly enjoyed the session. Thank you once again. So it's time for questions, and we'll just take questions now, and afterwards we just give break. So yes, if you have questions, you can raise up your hand. I'll unmute you here and you can speak. So 3 questions, we have room for just 3 questions. So I'll just take the first 3. Yes.
Hello.
Go ahead. Please.
Hello.
Okay, so my question is, we're talking about how to recycle waste and to derive products out of the waste material, what we actually used to call waste. So my question is, instead of focusing on recycling the waste, why don't we address the issues with the industrial processes that actually create the waste in the first place?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so do I answer that now? Okay, so yeah, so one of the things I mentioned that for circular economy, and if you paid attention at the beginning, I said that circular economy is not about recycling. So that's what I said. Circular economy is not about recycling. Recycling is the last resort. So you actually write in your question, and I will take it as a suggestion as well, that what needs to be done is to work on the industrial processes that generate these products, which is why I mentioned that as businesses, of course, one of the typical challenges is most businesses will not right now scrap out what they are doing, except they find out that it is economically viable in terms of the numbers of conversion, in terms of the capital and the profits that they are able to make from it is very, very high. So they will not switch out of the way. And of course, there is also government policy to consider as well. So it means that, yes, we are encouraging and advocating that the industrial processes be looked at, which is why we say design is the key. So if they can rework their designs or the processes that they go through to get their product, we have more to do. And then also if they can collaborate, because at the end of the day, there will always be outputs. So let's not call them waste anymore. Let's call them output. There will always be outputs that a company will typically not need. Do you understand? There will always be output that a company will typically not need. Now, rather than dispose of that carelessly, what happens is they can begin to find organizations or companies that utilize that output as their own raw material. So in that way, we're able to say that we're practicing circular economy. We're able to close the circle completely. I hope that sort of answers the question that you're asking, which is that, yes, recycling is the last resort. That's not even the focus. The focus is from the very beginning in your design process, in your industrial processes, minimize how much of outputs you produce that you don't need. And if you cannot, or once you've been able to do that, find organizations that utilize that output. Typical example, I'll give you Nigerian breweries, for example. Nigerian breweries will make products and then they will have their labels on it. How do they use the label? You don't need the label beyond that time. Now, they could try to say, okay, let's just print on the bottles or something like that. I don't know who is in charge of that. They could try to do that. But then for now, they've said that, okay, we don't want to do that. But our output, which is that our paper wrappers, we have somebody who makes ceiling boards. So the ceiling boards we have in our homes or ceiling tiles, we have somebody who makes these boards from that paper. So from the wrappings on your bottles, we have somebody who makes ceiling boards from those things, and we'll give this person these materials to go and make ceiling tiles from that. So they fed, like someone had mentioned, symbiotic relationships. So they've been able to feed the other business or the organization with something that they have. I hope that has been able to answer your question. So I think what will happen is I'll just take the two questions and answer them simultaneously so that it's faster. Yeah.
So the next question can go with. Michael from Jigawa, you can unmute your mic.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Sorry, you talk on the circular economy. What can you say about all these nylons that are difficult to recycle, like water, nylon, and
your voice is good. Sorry.
I said like
okay,
pure water, like
yes.
And if you move on the street, you see that those are the major wastes on the street.
Yes.
So is there working on making something recyclable on that nylon? Is there any plan making towards that?
That line, okay. Thank you for your question.
You got that question right. Let me just continue. Amina from Nasarawa. You can ask your question.
Okay, so good morning to everybody. Firstly, I would like to say kudos to the speaker because seriously, I enjoyed this class. It was very interactive and it was very informative. And I kind of made that suggestion about circular economy being all about recycling. And then you were saying it's not just about that. I was glad I made that comment because it gave more deep insight into what circular economy is. So kudos to you. And then my question is, are there projects or organizations put in place to discuss more about the circular economy and how we can learn more or contribute? Because sometimes it's kind of not motivating for somebody to say they want to take an action just by themselves or try to do something about the circular economy because you feel like you're alone most of the time. That's discouraging. So are there any organizations or projects that we can maybe contribute to or learn more on circular economy? And maybe you can share your link so we can start learning from there.
Okay, no problem. Okay, thank you very much for the questions. So for the first person that asked the question about the nylons, I think would I say colleagues? So other participants of this session have been able to give answers to those in the comments already. I was seeing their answers as well. That yes, I had mentioned something. So the typical example, the pure water nylon, I had mentioned that yes, that has been a very big issue. But then we saw someone who came up with an innovation that said, okay, pure water nylons, we can use them to make bags. So even after you are done drinking the pure water nylon, because it's unsanitary to go use the same nylon again to make water, to refill with water rather. So we can use those things to make bags, sandals, shoes. So what that person did was it took a normal process. So we make bags, shoes, and so on, typically with leather. But then instead of that, pure water nylons can be a material we can use to do those particular things. And you mentioned things about sweet nylons and so on and so forth. For sweet nylons and so on, I don't know of anybody that typically does something with sweet nylons, but I know that one of the things that we do advocate for is that people should begin to consider more sustainable ways of packaging. So when I say more sustainable ways of packaging, so it's either they use packaging materials that will decompose or packaging materials that will, how do we put it? Okay, packaging materials that will decompose or packaging materials, I think that's just the word, packaging materials that will decompose or packaging materials that are closer to nature. That is something they can use again, which I feel that organizations try to do when they do more of like jumbo size sweets rather than the small sizes of sweets and so on and so forth. So I think that work is being done in that line, but then more conversation has to be had with manufacturing bodies and then producers for that to make a whole, for there to be a whole lot of difference or for us to begin to see impact in that line. And yes, circular economy is relatively new. So yes, we can say that there is more opportunity and there is room for growth. I think that's a better way to say it. And then to answer the final question about organizations that are working on circular economy or projects, yes, there are organizations that are working on circular economy and projects. So typically they may not say, so here's the thing, they may not say, oh, we're working on circular economy. They may come and say we're producing XYZ using XYZ means. And then you can say, okay, yes, they fit into circular economy. So the examples I gave coconut, I gave ceiling board tiles. I didn't give an example. There's an example of somebody that makes electric tricycles with recycled materials. So these people may not typically be able to say, oh, we do circular economy, but you can tell because you know the principles and say you can work in any of those lines or fields. Some organization, my organization is SDGs-AP, Circular Economy Innovation Partnership. We have a community that we started recently, and that's to help people find, so like you asked, more organizations where you could probably intern, work with, get insights as to what to do. That's called the Circular Oasis Community. You can connect with me. So I'm Deborah Edward on LinkedIn. So you can connect with me there. And then I could share more about organizations. We have a lot of organizations. So we have Reswaye. Reswaye focuses on women development. and then they also care for the oceans. So in those ways, they are taking care of their environment. So ocean-borne areas, that's where they are focused on. We have Quad Loop. Quad Loop takes e-waste materials. I'm trying to round up e-waste materials and typically make them into solar panels and other things that you can use to charge your phones and devices, materials that are strictly recycled. We also have Givo, and they basically use technology. So there are a lot of organizations. I think what would be key is you now find which industry would you like to focus on, and then we can now find and say, okay, where do we place you there? And you know, one thing I'm going to say though is most of these organizations I've mentioned, Lagos, Abuja, Axis, but I'm sure that in other states in Nigeria, there are organizations. And maybe we could even say, okay, you in your state, I can't remember what state you said you're from, but you in your state, what if you go and do field work and find organizations that are actually practicing circular economy, but don't know how to describe what they do, or are not describing it as circular economy? Yes, in Enugu and so on. It could be a pet project for you to say, okay, in my community, and if you actually do this pet project, you can reach out to me. I will be so happy to take the research and the work you've done and publicize it or share it, because we want to actually create more awareness in your own state, in your own locales, in your environment. If you're willing to do the field work and find people that do these things, but they don't call it circular economy, we can find ways to begin to put them in the spotlight so that more people know that these things are being done in the environment, because I'm sure that they are being done. I hope that answers your questions, but yeah, you can reach out to me and then we could share more light. I'm sorry, we've gone over time. Yeah, I apologize for that. So over to you. Okay, yeah, she's from Nasarawa. I don't know if it was Joseph that was talking to me. Okay. So thank you very much, everyone, for the opportunity. Oluchi, I see you. I think your name has popped up a lot. Thank you so much to everyone for the opportunity to share. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much,
yeah.
Deborah.
Thank you.
Awesome session, I must say again, and we're really grateful to have you on this call. I believe the advocates have learned a lot, and they will act on what they've learned. I'm certain of that. Thank you once again. All right.
Okay. Thank you. Have a wonderful day ahead.
And you too. And you too. Okay, everyone. I'm sure you've had a great time. We'll be moving to the next session shortly. But please ensure you refer to your program guide all the time. Sessions will be happening every Friday, at least for the next 2 Fridays, 9 to 12 noon. Ensure you have this time free so that you can engage actively on the call, and it's going to really be an awesome time. Okay? Thank you, everyone, for joining in, and we'll be moving to the next session any moment from now. Yeah. While we wait, I don't know if anybody would want to share one or
Olamide is on
two.
the call.
Okay, it's up. Awesome.
Yes, he's on the call. Please, we would just like to raise his hand so that I can do it.
Yes, please, Olamide, kindly raise your hand so that we can do the needful.
He's on the calls now. You can write on.
Oh, okay. Awesome. All right, so our second speaker is Olamide Santos, co-founder, Earthlight International Limited, Oyo State, Nigeria. And they will be taking a session on climate change and environmental sustainability. So let's welcome Olamide for a session. Olamide, you have the floor. Okay, so Olamide, we can't hear you. Olamide, no audio. So we're not hearing you at all. right, everyone, let's just be patient for a bit. I think he's having a little challenge with his device, probably. Um, I'm sure he'll be up anytime from now. Lamde, try unmute your mic again, please.
Okay, I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so I apologize. I'm here to discuss climate change and environmental sustainability. So let's start from the basics, the nitty-gritty of it. That is explaining what climate change is. I don't know what the level of climate change is or anything, but I don't know if it's even possible. Before I start, I would have loved to hear about the organization. Maybe that's interesting because I also want to know how deep you guys are and where to start from. So I don't start from somebody you guys are already conversant with and repeat what you already know. So is it possible for me to hear anything about the organization first? And then the whole goal of this seminar.
Can you take that again, please, Lamde? Hi, Lamde, can you hear me? Am I audible enough? Olamide, you can please unmute your mic.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so someone keeps waiting me, so I apologize again. Before I went silent, I was asking maybe someone can take me through the philosophies and goals of the group and how deep we are in terms of climate change. So I don't repeat what is already basic knowledge for you guys. I don't know if it's possible.
All right, so this is UNSCSL Advocates Program, okay? And it's a program where we actually raise sustainable development goals advocates. That's and then it's it's well-rounded. We have from goals 1 to 17 of the SDGs. So people who are interested in any of these goals are people who have joined this program to learn for the next 3 months. So, and today your session is on climate change and environmental sustainability. That's
okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. So again, before my mic went silent the other time, I was saying that I have some videos out that I would love to share, but I'm having issues connecting my laptop. So probably, if I'm permitted, I can send the videos after the program. The video was supposed to explain some things that normally would have taken a lot of time, and maybe a lot of scientific explanation, so that it's a little bit simplified. But if I'm permitted, I would like to send them after the program. So before I start in totality, let me just introduce myself. My name is Ola-Olowoyo Santos. I am the co-founder of Earthlight International. I actually run it. And what Earthlight does basically is environmental solutions. We consult for companies, we help companies start up in terms of especially recycling. We help build recycling machines, and we're also branching into other things like agriculture, clean energy production, agricultural machines, and clean energy production. So this is what Earthlight really does. It's a company that is actually has a lot of promise and growth. But personally, I've been in the environmental space since 2014. And for me, it has been a slow but steady growth. And I'm happy to be here, and I hope that you guys enjoy my session. So, starting from the basis, right? Climate change and environmental sustainability. Usually, I start with definitions and conceptual clarification, all that, in case anybody has anything they don't understand. So, climate change and environmental sustainability are a mashup of two different words from two different philosophies. Climate change on its own is a mashup of two words, climate and change. So climate, you all know what the climate is. It's the totality of the weather condition over a long period of time. So climate change is basically changes that occur within the environment in terms of the weather conditions of a particular places. It is a shift in weather patterns, and this shift may be natural, but since the Industrial Revolution, that's around the 1980s, human activities have facilitated and speed up and made the climate change speed up drastically. So the essence of the Industrial Revolution, or the underlying push, the power generation of Industrial Revolution, was backed by fossil fuel, mostly coal, and then the introduction of oil and gas, So these have actually facilitated and made climate change a serious issue today. What we hear as climate change now is not something that started within the last few years. It has been a steady but gradual growth. But because of the emergency and the necessity to curb it, that is why the UN especially and a lot of global powers are now trying to see how they can mitigate or stop the effect of climate change. So climate change basically is just the change in temperatures or temperature of basically the Earth itself, right? So there's another ideology that a lot of people interchange or interuse with climate change is global warming. I don't know if anybody has heard the word global warming, but most people use climate change. But global warming is actually, as the word is the warming of the Earth's atmosphere or the warming of the environment. You can just say it is a gradual increase in the average temperature of the Earth. It is caused by the release of greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, methane, nitrogen oxide, CFC into the atmosphere. And everything that is released into the atmosphere comes from human use, human consumption. So there are basically two philosophies when it comes to global warming and climate change. One is that it is a natural phenomenon. The other is that it is a man-made event. Now, my own personal philosophy is that it is a normal thing due to some scientific reasons, so that changes in the Earth's orbit and all that, the Earth gradually would get hotter gradually. But on the other side, another side to note is the fact that the Earth atmosphere itself has a steady but slow growth. But like I said, human activity has made it so that these changes are now more drastic and are faster. And I think the UN has given us until maybe 2030 or 2050. I can't be so certain now, until we reach a point of no return where we can't correct the effect of climate change anymore. So if you see the things I mentioned, the greenhouse gases, I mentioned carbon, I mentioned methane, I mentioned CFC, I mentioned carbon dioxide. These are things that if you're conversant with daily use of a lot of things, car you drive releases carbon dioxide. When you put in your AC or even your fridge, you release CFC, which are chlorofluorocarbons or something like that, and other things, fertilizers release nitrogen oxide, and so human activities basically create these gases, and these gases are called greenhouse gases. And what they do is they help trap heat in the atmosphere. Right? So that's one of the major causes of global warming. Now, I can use global warming or climate change, but let me just, not to confuse you. Climate change is a change in the temperature of the Earth in general, right? Changes in temperature. Global warming is increase in temperature. So global warming itself is a form of climate change. And the only way the climate is actually changing temperature is by increase. So they're almost the same, but a lot of people use climate change. So when I use global warming or climate change, I can use them interchangeably. So it's basically the same principle, but just different ideas and just little differences, but basically it's almost the same thing, So again, causes of climate change or rising emissions, that's global warming. I mentioned the burning of fossil fuel, that's coal, oil and gas. And when you burn this fossil fuel, they also produce carbon dioxide. The car you drive, when you put your coal fire or maybe to breaking or whatever, it all produces carbon dioxide and nitrous oxide, Then cutting down forest, deforestation, mostly a lot of things come from wood, furniture, paper, a lot of wood has a lot of uses, and wood comes from trees, we all know that. But because trees have the ability to absorb carbon dioxide and produce oxygen, oxygen itself is something that is useful for our own survival. And then carbon dioxide as a greenhouse gas is consumed by trees. So the process of absorbing carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is called carbon sequestration. And trees and plants have the ability to sequester carbon. But when we continue to deforest and cut down trees, it reduces the ability of the earth to reduce carbon naturally. And so the carbon volume in the atmosphere keeps increasing. And obviously, indirectly, oxygen will be reducing because the trees that should produce oxygen are no longer allowed to flourish. They're being cut down for various uses, and then carbon is no longer being consumed by the tree. So yes, carbon something is one of the reasons why temperatures are increasing, because they're not allowing the trees to do what they do. Increase in livestock farming. I mentioned fertilizers use nitrogen and nitrous oxide emission. So a lot of people now are advocating for fertilizers that don't have that chemical products which affect the environment. So the last one, fluorinated gases, I mentioned CFC, fluorocarbon, which is used in our air conditioners and other things. These are things that also lead to carbon dioxide. So every time you put on your gas or your air conditioner or you drive, you take a plane, you're actually contributing to climate change and global warming. And if you check them, maybe when I get to the solution, so again, heat trapping, I just reiterate, heat trapping, that's by the greenhouse gas. Let me explain what I mean by heat trapping. I know there will be scientists among you, but for those that might not know, the sun releases light and heat energy. So the greenhouse gas forms like a kind of nylon or protective film around the Earth's atmosphere. And there is a balance of the equation of gases. That's what we call the greenhouse gases. There's a balance of it. But when one or more is produced, the equation, the balance is affected. And so what the greenhouse gases does basically it absorbs the necessary heat that is needed for survival on Earth and reflects the others back into space. But because this equation of greenhouse gases has been affected, what happens now is there's more heat entering into the Earth's atmosphere, and that is why temperature is increasing. So the greenhouse gases, when they are produced by human activity, they affect the natural God-given equation that has been available since the creation of the world, and it now affects us today in terms of making temperature rise. So one of the fastest ways to reduce or to stop climate change to immediately stop the production of greenhouse gases and the emission of greenhouse gases as well. So, I mentioned the reflectivity and absorption of the Earth's atmosphere. That's one of the reasons why the Earth is increasing. Then I mentioned that natural events, which is the rotation of the Earth and then the Earth's orbit and everything. I'm not a scientist, but I've heard that gradually the Earth is getting closer to the sun. And so when they say changing the Earth orbit, I guess this is what they mean by changing the Earth orbit. It's not something I know for a fact because I don't work in NASA or anywhere, but this is something we read in books. So I take it as fact as well, And volcanic activity is one of the last reasons why Earth's temperature is getting hotter. but that one is really not as a serious issue because the last volcanic eruption has been at least a while back. So I won't waste more time. I know I've wasted time from trying to set up. So how can we solve climate change? I've mentioned a few of that earlier on. Ending our reliance on fossil fuel, greater energy efficiency, using clean energy, using environmental friendly equipment, air conditioning and things like that. Sustainable transportation, that's electric cars and things, sustainable buildings. There are buildings that are created now using earth-friendly products, better forestry management and sustainable agriculture, conservation-based solutions, industrial solutions, technological solutions. So everything intertwines because industrial solutions, technical solutions, all the other solutions we mentioned, all flow. I mentioned solar, I mentioned electrical vehicles, these are all technology and industrial solutions. Then, yes, drive less, recycle more. Recycling is where I actually focus my energy on. Use less hot water, avoid products without packaging, that's plastic. Plant a tree. Very, very important. Tree planting is something that we know a lot, but it's fundamental to our survival. So that's all about climate change. So going to the next phase of which is environmental sustainability. The environment is an embodiment of where we live, It is the natural world, it is the entire geographical or a particular geographical location, depending on how you want to define it, So it is everything that is affected by our activity as humans, and the environment is broken into three parts: the aquatic, terrestrial, and the atmospheric. So aquatic, water, terrestrial, that's not atmospheric, that's air. And these three parts are ways by which pollution is released into the environment, air pollution, land pollution, water pollution. So based on the components, aquatic environment there are different kinds of, water bodies, marine, ocean, seas, freshwater lakes, all that, And when it comes to atmosphere, there are different kinds of gases in the air which form of the atmosphere. So the greenhouse gas is also part of the atmospheric environment, which is why the effects of what we do on the planet in terms of greenhouse gas emission affect the atmosphere first. And then other things like fertilizer, dump sites. I didn't mention dump sites before, but dumps have the ability to affect both land, air, and water simultaneously. Yeah, it's a major problem, and I'll try and explain dump sites as the time goes on in relation to landfills, so that you know the difference between landfills, because I hope that the solution providers will come up from this seminar in the next future. So I'll try and define the difference between landfills and dump sites. So environmental, social, and corporate governance, also known as ESG, is something I want to touch on. It's talking of solution providers. A lot of people who want to get into this space have to focus on those three aspects. And a lot of people will call, you've probably heard of people, planet, and profit. And but in general, the ESG is just aspects that businesses, especially that businesses that are in line with the SDG climate action, have to take awareness of, which is even other SDGs anyway, but environmental, social, and corporate governance, as well as governance. And these are three aspects that a lot of investors, investors that are inclined with the UN SDGs look for. So it's not really part of my something, but I just had to mention it. So people that might be interested to actually go deeper into it, the three pillars of the SDGs, environmental, it has to do impact on the planet, the social has to do with organizations, the people, the staff, customers, the community. Governance has to do with how the organization is governed, the level of transparency and their goals, all that, So, sustainability. Sustainability is broadly used to indicate programs, initiatives, and actions aimed at preservation of a particular resource. So, however, it refers to four distinct areas: human, social, economic, and environmental, known as the four pillars of environment. I can say that again: human, social, economic, and environmental. Four areas of sustainability is human, social, economic, and environmental. So if you look at this, it also sounds similar to the ESG I mentioned before, which is why I had to mention it. These are things that are factors for sustainability, and every investor looks forward to a sustainable business, not just in terms of profit, but in terms of the planet and people. So environmental sustainability as a whole is the ability to maintain an ecological balance in our planet's natural environment. That is making sure that everything is balanced in proportion to the way it should be. I mentioned how the greenhouse gases are being affected because of the emission of one or more gases, and the equation has been affected, and the unsustainability or the lack of the destruction of it has created or allowed more heat to enter our atmosphere and created that, what I mentioned as heat trapping. So basically, if the greenhouse gases have been sustained from the inception, even with whatever method it had been used, probably won't have this issue today. So sustainability is very important, and it is the driving force for whatever we do. Environmental sustainability in general is the solution to climate change problems. So, we talk about reduction in fertilizers, reduction in carbon emission, nitrous oxide, nitrogen, and all that. It all boils down to sustainability, making sure that the ecological balance is maintained. Even as humans, it takes too much of sugar, it could affect us. It takes too much of something, too much of anything is not good, and that is where sustainability comes in. We need to keep balance in everything we do. So that's basically the relationship between environmental sustainability and climate change. And environmental sustainability on its own is a solution to climate change, and the principles of climate change say that this is a problem. Environmental sustainability looks at it, okay, this is how we solve the problem. And things like solutions I mentioned before, recycling, try not to drive too much. If possible, take a walk. Walking is good for your health. It's a form of exercise. You bike, you use clean energy, you do a lot of things. So these are things that create the balance for us and our environment. So I hope I'm following. I hope you guys are following. I hope my points are being clearly delivered. So continuing, I'm almost done. So 7 keys to achieve sustainable goals. 7 keys to achieve sustainable goals, infrastructure imperatives. That is, I mentioned something about sustainable buildings, you know. There are other things apart from buildings that can use alternative infrastructure, to use that word. As mentioned, I will mention carbon management. That's, of course, management of carbon emission, green energy, circular economy. Circular economy again is where I focus. It focuses on recycling and other things. Environmental conservation, water conservation, energy efficiency, and all that. So sustainability itself is important for the survival of the planet. I think I mentioned that in brief earlier on. When we manage the planet, we manage ourselves, and then avoiding the use of, plastic bags, keep the oceans clean. These are the videos I wanted to show you about pollution in the oceans and the landfills. I wanted to show videos on that, but unfortunately, I don't have access to the video because of my laptop, so I apologize for that. So again, planting trees, very, very important. These are solutions for survival. No, I mean, I said I was going to give a brief talk about dump sites and landfills. Most of us have probably come to Lagos or have dump sites around us. So when I say Lagos, a lot of us have probably passed Ojota on our way entering Lagos, maybe from some part of the west or something. And we see the Ojota dump site. Very, very, it's an eyesore, it smells, and there's a time where it used to, like almost a week or more, it was on fire. So to explain dump site is just a place where our refuse is gathered and it's packed. Now, why dump sites have an issue that they use methane? Methane is a form of gas that can be harvested for cooking. I know IIT here in Ibadan started a project in terms of methane generation from waste. And then it also releases a chemical leachate which seeps into the ground, enters the groundwater, and can pollute water bodies. So people who might want to dig wells or boreholes around the dump site area might be pulling out contaminated water. And then the health implications from the smell and the eyesore is another thing, So basically, what a landfill is an organized dump site. It's a well-planned dump site. What they do is they first of all line the floor of the dump site. They line it with maybe plastic film or something that will not allow the waste to seep into the ground. And they connect some pipes to draw out the chemical leachate and other from the waste. There's connection for the methane gas to be harvested, and then it's also covered to avoid, disturbing view from passerbys and things like that. Also putting into consideration that the interaction of rain and sunlight from the dump site is also another problem that helps to create a lot of gaseous release from the dump site, and also the smell. If you notice, if you keep your refuse sometimes well covered, it doesn't smell, but once you leave it to the effect of nature, it starts to smell. So that's the same thing with dump site. So landfill is something that is well organized, planned. It makes sure that the effect of piling up your waste is reduced drastically, and the benefits in terms of harvesting the methane, which can be used for cooking, and is also cleaner than the normal propane and propane we use for cooking. is harvested and can be used for power generation or whatever it needs to be used for, So I, for one, gas has more energy efficiency than petrol or diesel. And considering even this period of high fuel pump price, a lot of people, including myself, have switched their generator from petrol to gas. And I can tell you firsthand that it's actually cheaper. So gas has more efficiency. Gas doesn't burn as fast as petrol, and it's cheaper to buy gas these days. So using gas to power industry is a cheaper form of energy. And these are things that I think Nigeria needs to start looking towards, So this is why I had to mention the issue of landfill. Then just quickly, the video I wanted to send mentioned something called gyras. I hope you guys can Google it. Gyras, Gyres. There are 5 gyras on the Earth's ocean body. And what the gyres are just water currents that form in a vortex manner, and they draw waste into the vortex. So we have kind of not an island in particular, but a place where waste is gathered, like a water, like in a dump site on the ocean. Waste is put from everywhere into these 5 gyres, and it just continues to pull in more waste. So when we use waste, it either flows into the dump site or into the ocean. And because the dump site can be organized into landfill, it's better for us to actually make our landfills work or just recycle and use the waste all over again. And I can tell you that there's nothing that cannot be recycled. Almost everything we use is made from plastic. From the mattress we use to the clothes we wear, the sustainable buildings. I can tell you that you can make bricks from plastic or using plastic. You can make a lot of things from plastic. So recycling basically has a lot of options, but a lot of people are looking for the most financially stable option, which is not bad, but there are other options which can be harvested for recycling. So the gyras in particular, it's a video I hope you guys can research, and the gyras and the landfills, for me, that is the most important thing for us to actually understand the danger of waste pollution. Waste pollution is another man-made problem, and because most of the things we make from the earth now is plastic. Why ocean pollution is very dangerous and sensitive, because when the plastic enters into this ocean, it breaks up into like tiny particles, and fish, starting from the smaller fish, plankton, eat these things, then bigger fish eat those ones, and bigger fish eat the small fish, until we now catch the big fish and we eat it. And so these are some of the things that might be responsible for cancer. That and the issue I mentioned about the dump sites, the chemical leachate and the terrible odor which creates health implications and everything. So apart from greenhouse gases and all that, the health effect of pollution itself on us is another reason that could shorten our own lifespan. So these are things that we need to take into cognizance of the people. So this is the end of my talk. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Try not to be too long, but if there are any questions for me, I'll be happy to try and take them.
All right, thank you so much, Olamide. It's quite an insightful session we've had. So if anyone has questions for Olamide, kindly raise up your hand. I'll take the first people that I see on the screen. So if you have questions for him, raise up your hand. Okay. I can see one hand up. 2 more, and that's the only person. So we'll just take that. But yeah. Okay, so uh, I'll mute Gabriel now so she can ask that question. Yes, you can go.
Yes, you can go. Good morning, sir. Thank you very much for the lesson. It was very insightful. So I think my question for me is, I mean, having understood how, landfills are better than dump sites, I'm thinking that because of the current state that the world is now, most people are thinking of technological solutions to like some of the world's most pressing problems. So I'm just, to be honest, I don't know if this is like a question, but I don't know how much role technology can actually play in. I mean, we have health tech companies, a lot of them. We have lots and lots of fintech companies, but I think waste management is something that, I feel like it's not very easy to come up with a technological solution. I guess I'm just asking, are there ways that we could have more tech solutions to waste management problems in a society like ours?
Well, for tech solution, I believe it begins with research and development. And research and development in any society is expensive. So we need people to first of all sponsor and promote research and development. Most of the technology we use in Nigeria for waste management, especially, is imported from overseas. So if we have a research and development system, we can maybe take this technology, adapt them, or create new technology that can help us to do better. But one thing is certain is that for people that are interested, for countries that are interested, waste management has gone a long way further. They do ocean cleanups using different innovative methods. They, like I said, landfills. I don't think there's any proper landfill in Nigeria. What we have are just dump sites.
I think he's having a bit of issue with his network. Let's just wait a bit. I'm sure we'll be right back. So while we wait, attendance will be shared in the next few minutes. And maybe I'll just do this right away. APT, we are still waiting for your state representative. You've not done that. And you have till tomorrow to present someone. You have till tomorrow to present someone. Then Yobe State, so we're expecting your state representative, and please ensure you have this ready by tomorrow. Just arrange a representative within yourself. You can nominate someone, you can vote. Just do this thing and then have it over with. Okay, so you have till tomorrow to do that. Before tomorrow evening, kindly take action. Before tomorrow evening, kindly take action. And for every other person, ensure you engage consistently on the chat. While sessions are on, please try as much as possible to engage so that the facilitators will know that you are following. It's important. It's quite important that you do that. I'm about to share the link. So yeah, so the day you have the link, you can start filling it and submitting your attendance. It's been an amazing session today. I was going to ask if anyone took maybe a key learning from the session, either of the two sessions. I don't know if anyone would want to share. Just let me know if you'd really love to share. Let's see what you learned and how this program has been for you. So if there's anyone that wants to share a key learning, all right, Jeremiah or Joe, awesome. All right, go ahead, Jeremiah.
All right, good day. Can we hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, great. Today I really enjoyed the first session, and it was really it opened my mind to a lot of things, coupled with the fact that I'm working on reusable sanitary towel for girls. I produced them, and it made me to know that what I am doing is a sector of economy that is evolving, and there is more room to improve, and there is more space for me to give back to the society. And I would be eager and encouraged to do more and give back to society. And I want to really say that it is great. And this section that is concluding, I want to say that I also learned about climate change, how we can help curb the increase of temperature in the society. I want to say thank you for this opportunity. And I'm the Oyo State representative, and I believe that we are going to come out with as a more rounded person and ready to advocate for SDGs now and continuously. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremiah. Awesome. So let's have Gabriela. Yes, you can go, Gabriela.
Okay, thank you very much. It's actually Gabrielle, but thank you so much. I learned so much from the speakers today, and I really appreciate the lessons. And some of what I took away from the very last speaker has a lot to do with me understanding clearly the difference between, global warming, climate change, how one is an increase in temperature, the other one is just a general change. And he kind of, narrowed down a lot, speaking about waste management, which I really, really enjoyed listening to, because it's something that I've been working on. And I like that he says that, there's need to put more research and development in order to find solutions to waste management in the country. He shared so much about the difference between dump sites, landfills, and, so many of these things. And for me, I like the fact that he connected waste pollution to health, basically talking about how plastics, turn to microplastics and how it can impact negatively on the health of people if it's not something that we're very careful about, solving. So I really appreciate that. That's pretty much what I learned. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Gabrielle. Now, okay, let me just take Aisha, and that will be it for today. Aisha, you can go. Yes, Aisha, I'll mute your mic.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Aisha.
Good morning. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Morning to you. So you can ask. You can make your conclusion.
Okay. Mine is not. Before I proceed, I would like to thank SDSN for the opportunity given to me to be part of this advocate program. I really appreciate. I must confess, I've really learned a lot since we started this program. My question is, can I say it's a question or a suggestion? Since the beginning of, I think, let me say, since the removal of subsidy from fuel, I noticed there is this man. I saw the man on Facebook was trying to tell, he was saying something about recycling of pure water nylon to petrol. Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm with you, Aisha.
Okay, the guy was like, he recycled pure water nylon to petrol, but the guy was like some kind of the challenges he was facing because there is no much money for him to be doing the project or something. I was now thinking, is there a way that SDG could help this kind of a guy because he's still is working pertaining to in line with SDG goals? Is there a way they can help the guy?
All right, so I didn't really get that. Can you just take it again, please?
Hello?
Can you hear me, Aisha?
Hello?
Can you hear me? Aisha, are you still on this call? Can you hear me? Okay, so I think that's about that. If you can hear me, please drop in the chat that you can hear me. I just want to be sure that I'm audible enough and people can absolutely hear me. Awesome. David, let me hear you. What do you want to say? I think that's the last question.
Okay, thank you very, very much. Am I audible enough?
Yes, you are.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank the organizers of this conference. I've really learned a whole lot from the first speaker and the second speaker that spoke about climate change. I've really learned a whole lot, but I have just a tiny bit of contribution that I want to make because I actually have some experience in climate action. So I just wanted to add this, I just wanted to make this contribution. Actually, the thing with greenhouse gases is this. Greenhouse gases are actually beneficial. If we didn't have any greenhouse gases on Earth, the Earth is going to be very icy. This is what happens. I'm going to be very...
I've sent the things. You kindly share on YouTube.
Am I audible? Are you still hearing me? Can I go on?
Yes, go on, please.
Okay. So the thing with greenhouse gases is this: each time the sun shines, each time we have solar radiation, the earth crust, the plants, the solar panels, the water bodies absorb some of the solar radiation, some of the rays from the sun. They use it for processes, like the plants use it for photosynthesis and the rest. And a healthy amount of it is radiated back to space, the outer atmosphere. Now, these greenhouse gases naturally trap and act as a blanket. So not all of that solar heat, not all of that heat and solar radiation goes back to space. So that heat actually keeps us warm, because without those greenhouse gases, we would all freeze to death on Earth. So that's part of the mechanisms that makes the Earth habitable for humans to live in. But the problem now is that ever since the Industrial Revolution, human activities have really sped up the introduction of these greenhouse gases in humongous amounts in the Earth, in the atmosphere. So now it has brought about the fact that we have so much of these greenhouse gases, and then the heat that should escape to the outer atmosphere now remains with us. And that now gives birth to the global warming, and now the climate changes, and we all know that when there is so much heat, the water expands, and that's what gives rise to the sea levels rising and all of that. But on the whole, the classes have been very, very, very expository and so easy to understand. I just want to say kudos to the organizers and thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, David. Quite an interesting contribution. So I think this should bring us to the end of the session. But please, like I said earlier, if you are in a state and you're on the group, please ensure that by tomorrow we have your representative. As a matter of fact, you can just volunteer yourself. And the same goes for Yobe State. If you belong to the Yobe group, ensure that we have your representative by tomorrow. So you have between today and tomorrow evening to provide someone as your representative. And it's just going to be an awesome ride from there. Once again, I want to appreciate all our facilitators. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Olamide. We had awesome time with you guys. And thank you everyone for joining the session today. We've learned stuff on climate action. We've learned greenhouse gases. We've learned a whole lot today. So please, it's not just for learning's sake. Ensure that what you are learning, you are also applying in your own little way. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for the commitment to learning. Thank you for engagement. But please, I would like to say to us that engagement is important. Engagement is priority. You must just engage. You have to engage. You have to really, really engage. Because that's how facilitators will be carried along. That's how they know that you're actually learning. You're learning. It is imperative that you do so. It is imperative that you do. One moment, please. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining the session today. We've had awesome time. We've had an amazing time. And we'll meet you in the group chat. Yes, we'll have further conversations on the group. Interact with yourself, get to know each other. There are great stuff ahead. Thank you. Have a wonderful day ahead, guys. Bye. Cheers.